my name is Sarah Entwistle, and I live in Berlin. The title of the exhibition, "The Knots of Tender Love Are Firmly Tied," is a line from a poem written by my grandfather, Clive Entwistle. It was an erotic poem addressed to one of his lovers. And I think there's an implication of it being around bondage, sadomasochism. He was quite interested in different practices like this. And in the context of the exhibition, I think I've kind of extrapolated it and really looked at it more in the context of a family structure. Just in terms of the language of the sentence, I'm interested in that implication of this kind of tender love that also is can be quite oppressive and, let's say, kind of confining, or, there's an ambiguity there and a kind of, or a multiplicity of how you could read that line. I mean, most of my titles, all my titles, in fact, are taken from the material I work with, which is the, let's say, informal archive of my grandfather. He was an urban designer as well as an architect, and where I'm feeling really kind of interested in this idea of dismantling of the archive and also the kind of confronting of the gender dynamics, as you say, is really responding to his formal practice and formal ideology with my own, which I feel there's a feminist position. It's that there's an architectural discourse around this idea of fragmentation, female fragmentation in the city, and how women experience urban landscape as opposed to men. And at the moment, I mean, you can see with the pieces that there's this kind of open form to the sculptural elements. It's very hard to read orientation in the form. So I don't have like a kind of formal hierarchy in the objects. That's a good starting point in kind of response to him. He was a mid-century post-war modernist, working very much with these kind of complete forms. I mean, in the same way that architects are still doing today, these total ideas that are then placed into the city. And they're kind of impervious. And they often, interestingly, I'm not even sure how conscious he was of this, but they often do have this kind of abstracted figuration of the female body present there, with kind of these breasts on the roof, or certain kind of torsos. And there's also real parallels when you see his photographic work of the women that he was involved with. And so, yeah, I think just on a kind of formal sculptural level, I'm already trying to kind of have a dialogue with him, respond to that. And even in the making, there's a kind of confrontation for me with a certain masculinity that's kind of been given to these spaces. So, for example, I work in a metal disposal yard in Berlin. It's a inherently male space. I mean, everyone working there are men, and and you can see this kind of amusement and a little bit of dismissal, and when I arrive, and then as I start to show a certain kind of confidence in how I'm approaching these mounds of metal, and I can just feel the shift. I can feel the power shift. And I think there's something interesting in Clive's work, because he designed a lot of prototype furniture and other systems that he patented, etc. And very often they failed technically, but I think with hindsight they were also hugely successful, and because he was testing things, he was trying new things. But I think with the sculptural works that I do, I think the failure is kind of, for me, very interesting, and it's actually right now again back to a kind of formal question of balance, or a certain kind of instability in the works, because there's a lot of tension when you see them, because they're balanced. Mostly they're kind of just held in place just at that moment when they could collapse. And I think failure as well, in that they're not easily legible as functional objects, but they have proportional and textual and material kind of allusions to functional objects or furniture. There is some kind of trying to a revision of his narrative, which is that he failed, and trying to see the projects in the archive that were not kind of consecrated, were not completed or realized, as just beginnings for something. I mean, beginnings for me, so Yeah.